Now, to kick off this morning's program, we are pleased to have Dr. David Honey, the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. In his role, he assists Undersecretary and Chief Technology Officer in managing research, development, and prototyping activities across the Department of Defense enterprise. He also helps oversee the activities of the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA, the Missile Defense Agency, and the Defense Innovation Unit, the Space Development Agency, the DoD Laboratory and Engineering Center Enterprise, and the Undersecretariat staff focused on developing advanced technology and capability for the U.S. military. He previously served in various other leadership roles at DARPA, the Strategic Technology Office, Advanced Technology Office, and Microsystems Technology Office, and elsewhere in the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So, without further ado, Dr. Honey, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Michael, for the introduction, and thank you all for spending time at this conference. This is a very important activity, and one that I know that will benefit you by having participated. In the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, where I work, standardization is not just a part of what we do; it's integral to our work. For today's talk, I'll tell you a little bit about our organization and then show you the types of standardization activities we support and the impact. And then at the end, there's one very special standardization activity that I want to talk about for just a moment before I head out. In R&E, research and engineering, our mission is really twofold. First, we have the lead responsibility within the department for synchronizing S&T efforts across the DoD, the Joint Staff, and the services. And second, USD R&E serves as the Chief Technical Officer for the department and is tasked with ensuring continuous advancement of technology and innovation within the DoD enterprise. Earlier this year, Undersecretary Hsu published our strategic vision for R&E. I won't review it in detail. It's on our website. You can read about the 14 critical technology areas, but I will outline how standardization fits into the Undersecretary's three strategic pillars. The first strategic pillar is mission focus, where DoD uses standards to improve operational capabilities. And I'll give some examples in just a few moments of that. The second pillar is foundation building, where standards are foundational to innovation. They're used to share best practices, establish technical requirements, enable interoperability, and allow rapid insertion of new technologies, all of tremendous benefit to us. And the third pillar is succeed through teamwork. I'm sure all of you know standardization is a team sport. Technical experts from across the department work together to define technical requirements, and we partner across the interagency. For example, with DHS, NASA, and other federal agencies, departments, and activities, as well as with industry and standards development organizations, or SDOs, such as SAE, ASTM, IEEE, and ISO. And so it's great to be in a group that understands what all those acronyms are, so I don't have to spell them out. And most of my Pentagon briefings, I've got to spend about an extra 15 minutes telling everybody what each of these means. Unlike previous eras, the DoD today prefers the use of non-government standards where practical and where they meet DoD needs. And so I was in the Air Force as an officer at the time when the DoD made the break from always using a mil spec on everything and to looking towards commercial spec as a way to do business. That was a transformational moment for a lot of people who were not used to that, but it really has had tremendous benefits for the DoD. Commercial U.S. standards systems is a private sector led, and it benefits from open competition and cooperation amongst the private sector and technology and industry participants. And it really has worked out very well. We see a lot of great things that come out of that, and we participate, and our contractors participate, and we really do benefit from that. So on to some examples. Let me illustrate for you the importance of standards to our mission in R&E and to the department as a whole by some very particular examples that we've offered up for you today. I was glad to hear the mention of the B-52 because I was an Air Force pilot and actually did fly the B-52, two models, the D and the H. And so I still take a lot of interest in standardization activities and things that relate to military aviation in general. And there was a lot of great standardization work that was done in the Joint Precision Approach and Landing System, or JPALS, something that came along after I flew. Just to help calibrate you, GPS came along after I stopped flying. So that's how long ago that was. But before JPALS, each service had its own precision aviation landing system, and they were not interoperable, not even with civil systems. So that presented a lot of challenges for us. And a joint team was formed, which conducted market research to find the best technology for a flexible approach and landing system that would suit all of the services. This is an ongoing activity across a number of domains where the services independently develop something, and then several years down the road, they realize that their buying power is not what it could be if they were working together. The ability to share maintenance costs, or even if you deploy to another base, operating one of the services, and you need work done on your aircraft, you're going to run into problems if everybody's doing something different. So this joint team came together, and what they found was that the differential global positioning system, or DGPS, satisfied all objectives in all operational environments. DGPS provides improved location accuracy down to centimeters by using a network of fixed ground-based reference stations to broadcast the difference between positions for the GPS satellites and known fixed locations. Those of you that are familiar with the old NORAN system, that may sound like something that you already understand, and for good reason. Developing standards was one of the first things that the JPALS team did. DGPS needed to meet the needs of both military and civil aviation and be interoperable with industry, with NATO, and with global systems. And that NATO aspect is very important because, again, we don't deploy just within the US, we deploy around the world. And so being interoperable with the systems of other countries and other militaries is incredibly important. They worked with the Radio Technical Commission for Aeronautics, a not-for-profit consensus-based information organization that developed standards to develop fully interoperable dual-use standards for DGPS technology. The Navy and Air Force demonstrated the efficacy of these specifications and standards in tests of JPALS prototypes. The tests proved that GPS could perform as required, even in high-risk at-sea auto landings and operations during hostile jamming. The Navy just last year declared JPALS at IOC. Also using JPALS, the Air Force landed a C-21 aircraft successfully more than 100 times under severe GPS jamming conditions, which is something that for DoD is incredibly important because we face that eventuality in our real-world operations. Another example is the effort to develop standards for test methods applied to ballistic-resistant body armor and helmets, which has been very beneficial to our service members and law enforcement professionals as well. An example of where, from the DoD perspective, there are dual-use applications, and this is one that's worked out very well for both parties. An effort by the Army, the National Institute of Justice, or NIJ, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, produced standards that ensure body armor will perform as required. Changes in threats and differences in missions drive different requirements for body armor, and up until recently, each organization, of course, had its own specific standards. So getting people together to work on these issues is always a challenge, but the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan drove the military's need for better body armor, and it needed to be tested, purchased, and fielded very quickly. The Army's decision to shift to performance-based procurement for their next-generation body armor systems also drove the need for new testing facilities, which the Army at that time did not have. They worked with the NIJ to use their testing laboratory for the Army's new body armor system and immediately found a need for common testing standards. Together with NIST, the Army and the NIJ worked with ASTM International, a private sector American National Standards Institute accredited standards development organization, or SDO, to create harmonized standards for testing body armor via a consensus development process. Very important in these activities that when we get people together, sometimes the DoD is a very large purchaser, and it's easy to try and get our standards a lot of attention, but at the same time, we need to incorporate the needs of others, of our partners, and give equal weight where we can, and work together as a team to achieve consensus in these processes. The end result is a set of testing standards applicable to both military and law enforcement, and better body armor delivered to troops in the field. This is something that's of personal interest to me. Our youngest son is a Virginia State police officer. He's also in the Army Reserves, so he gets to use these things from both sides. And so I'm very happy to see that activity come to a very successful state. The third example I'll use today is in the field of microelectronics. Our principal director for microelectronics, Dr. Devan Shenoy, is leading efforts to drive standards development for this important area. There are some good standards in microelectronics, but it's an ever expanding field. As new technologies come along, there is a need for new standards to be developed that are going to be useful to the community as a whole. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term heterogeneous integration, what that means is you're taking a number of disparate technologies, putting them into a single device, wafer, or package, and you're achieving a higher level of performance than you could have with any one single material system. Very complicated. My PhD dissertation was in that area, and I didn't think I'd ever get it done. It was that difficult. But in any event, heterogeneous integration of microelectronic devices, or the integration of separately manufactured components into higher level assembly that provides enhanced functionality and improved performance, is industry's path forward for continuing to increase the performance of digital microelectronics and integrated chips. You've all heard the phrase Moore's Law coming to an end. To a certain extent, that's true. The feature size that we can have on a chip is getting smaller and smaller, and it is approaching a limit where we can't make things any smaller. But heterogeneous integration is what the industry is looking towards as a way to move forward and continue to improve performance and sell new devices, which is incredibly important. The Trusted and Assured Microelectronics Program, or T&AM, that Dr. Shenoy leads, is supporting demonstration projects to enable heterogeneous integration of digital, analog, and mixed signal devices to develop the next generation of systems for future warfighter capabilities. As you can imagine, each of those communities existed separately. They each have their own way of doing things, their own set of standards, their own approaches. And so getting all that together to benefit the warfighter is a huge challenge. So the transition to the new model of heterogeneous integration, as a result, is not going to be easy as there are no broadly accepted standards for interfacing heterogeneous devices. And this is really where we need a lot of help going forward. Standards development is a long process, and SDOs play a critical facilitation role. For microelectronics, again, IEEE, SEMI, ASME, they have come together and, for our benefit, have jointly established the heterogeneous integration roadmap. And we're very grateful for that activity. The goal of the roadmap is to provide guidance to the profession, industry, academia, and to government to identify key technical challenges with sufficient lead time so as to continue progress in electronics. Also, a standard interface developed by Intel Corporation known as AIB, or Advanced Interface Bus, is being demonstrated through the T&AM program. And we have a number of activities that will be integrating these commercial products for the benefit of the warfighter. And again, standards and standardization is key throughout and is the way forward that we need to continue to support and participate in. R&E has also been supporting the development of standards for microelectronics hardware security through this T&AM program, and draft standards have been developed for microchips known as ASICs, which are application-specific integrated circuits, which is the big thing that Intel and TSMC, that's what they're really known for. And for another microelectronic device, which is very important to the DoD because of the fact that it can be reprogrammed out in the field. These are FPGAs, also known as field programmable gate arrays. And there are a number of ANSI-led workshops which will address challenges in developing standards for these COTS products. Again, having the commercial world involved in this so that the DoD does not bear the brunt of doing the work is incredibly important, because with the broader community, we'll see a much better group of standards and standardization processes developed. There are also ongoing efforts, such as DARPA's Common Heterogeneous Integration in IP Reuse of Strategies, also known as the CHIPS program, not to be confused with the CHIPS Act that Congress just passed last week. We reuse the acronyms quite a bit in the DoD. And R&E's T&M program is developing interface standards IP reuse methodologies, and modular design approaches with the goal of making heterogeneous integration as straightforward as printed circuit board design and assembly without compromising device performance. DoD's programs will enable convergence on an interface standard that will leverage existing standards and is also tailored for the specific technical requirements of connecting a diverse set of microchips. A lot of work to be done there. There are many more examples that we could go through of how standardization improves operational capabilities and is foundational to innovation, but I would like to just briefly mention two more. First is the joint standardization boards, like the Aerial Refueling Systems Advisory Group, which play a key role in ensuring aerial refueling standards and interoperability as airframes requirements continue to evolve. Something that seems straightforward, but when you consider that we have drones that now have to pull up behind an aircraft and get refueled, we have drones that may be carrying the fuel. They're going to refuel manned aircraft and drones. There's just a lot of work that has to be done in figuring out how that will come together and be successful. Second thing that I'll mention is modern engineering tools and practices, including digital engineering, modular open systems architecture, which are helping us design, modernize, and sustain defense systems, which often outlast commercial technology by decades. These tools are helping sustain B-52s and helping to design and build Columbia-class submarines, which are currently under construction. I was very fortunate. I got to fly the latest model of B-52. They were all built when I was in the second and third grade. I also flew an older model that was from before that. So again, those activities are incredibly important in keeping the DoD mission alive and well. So, in conclusion, as I've noted, standards development is a team sport. We really do rely on professionals such as yourselves. You play a key role in developing these standards, and we need to be able to field joint interoperable capabilities that will perform as required in all environments. And just as importantly, we in DoD recognize the need for the U.S. to drive the development of global standards. And there's been a lot in the press about how China has taken a lead in trying to develop the standards for 5G and whatnot. The U.S. government is not sitting idly by. We are very active in these things as well, and conferences such as this and groups such as this play a key role in helping in that regard. So I apologize that I will not be able to stay here for very long because I'm headed back to the Pentagon for a 2-hour meeting that's chaired by the Deputy Secretary of Defense. And standards and standardization will play a big role in this meeting. It's JADC2. And we're going to be doing a 2-hour deep dive into JADC2. And, I go to a lot of meetings for JADC2 is discussed. And if we're talking about transmitters, receivers, antennas, the weapons, things like that, there's always a lot of discussion, and it's very good. But as soon as you start mentioning standards and standardization, everybody becomes quiet. It's the elephant in the room of that program, and it's a difficult issue. And I wish I could predict for you that in this 2-hour meeting this morning, we're going to fix those issues, but that's not the case. In fact, I'm hoping that a lot of you, out of the talks that you'll hear over the next couple of days and the various activities that you'll have here, you'll be better prepared to go in and solve those problems for us because it's difficult. And, again, each of the services doing great work, developing the capabilities that they need to be developed. But as soon as we start talking about the standards and standardizations to work jointly and be interoperable and develop the kill chains and the kill webs that the warfighters need, it's a big, big, big challenge. And unfortunately, the 2-hour meeting this morning will be just one small down payment along the trail to get to the final solution. But again, thank you for the chance to be here. Thank you for listening to my comments about this today. And before I head out, if there's any questions, I've got a few moments to answer. I'll do that. If not, again, thank you for the chance to be here.